The Jerusalem Bible, chapter 21. Yahweh said to Moses, "Speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, none of them is to make himself unclean by going near the corpse of one of his family, unless it be of his closest relations, father, mother, son, daughter, brother. He may also make himself unclean for his virgin sister, if she is still a close relation, since she has not belonged to a man. If a husband, he must not make himself unclean for his family. In doing so, he would profane himself. They must not wear trousers, shave the edges of their beards, nor gash their bodies. They shall be consecrated to their God, and must not profane the name of their God, for it is they who bring the burnt offerings to Yahweh, the food of their God, and they must be in a holy condition. They must not marry a woman profaned by prostitution, or one divorced by her husband, for the priest is consecrated to his God. You shall treat him as holy, for he offers up the food of your God. He shall be a holy person to you, because I, Yahweh, am holy, who sanctify you. If the daughter of a man who is a priest profanes herself by prostitution, she profanes her father, and must be burnt to death. The priest who is preeminent over his brother, on whose head the chrism is poured, and who, clothed with the sacred robes, receives investiture, is not to dishonor his hair or tear his garments. He must not go near a dead man's corpse. He must not make himself unclean even for his father or his mother. He must not leave the holy place, so that he may not profane the sanctuary of his God, for he bears on himself the consecration of his God, given by the oil of anointing. I am Yahweh. He must take to wife a woman who is still a virgin. He must not marry a woman who is a widow or divorced, or profaned by prostitution. Only a virgin from his own family may he take to wife. He must not profane his Levitical descendants, for it is I, Yahweh, who have sanctified him. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, "Speak to Aaron and say, none of your descendants in any generation must come forward to offer the food of his God if he has any infirmity. No man must come near if he has an infirmity such as blindness or lameness, if he is disfigured or deformed, if he has an injured foot or arm, if he is a hunchback or dwarf, if he has a disease of the eyes or of the skin, if he has a running sore, or if he is a eunuch. No descendant of Aaron, the priest, must come forward to offer the burnt offerings of Yahweh if he has an infirmity. If he has an infirmity, he must not come forward to offer the food of his God. He may eat the food of his God, things most holy and things holy, but he must not go near the veil or approach the altar, because he has an infirmity, and must not profane my holy things, for it is I, Yahweh, who have sanctified them." And Moses told this to Aaron, to his sons, and to all the sons of Israel. Leviticus chapter 22. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, "Speak to Aaron and his sons. Let them be consecrated through the holy offerings of the sons of Israel, and not profane my holy name. For my sake they are to sanctify it. I am Yahweh. Tell them this: any one of your descendants in any generation who in a state of uncleanness approaches the holy offerings consecrated to Yahweh by the sons of Israel shall be outlawed from my presence. I am Yahweh. Any one of Aaron's line who is afflicted with leprosy or with a discharge must not eat holy things until he is clean. Anyone who touches something made unclean by a dead body, or has a seminal discharge, or is made unclean by touching either some creeping thing or some man who has communicated to him his own uncleanness of whatever kind. In short, anyone who has had any such contact shall be unclean until evening, and must not eat holy things until he has washed his body. At sunset he will be clean, and may then eat holy things, for these are his food. He must not eat an animal that has died a natural death, or been savaged by beast. He would contract uncleanness from it. I am Yahweh. Let them keep my rules and not burden themselves with sin. If they profane them, they shall die. It is I, Yahweh, who have sanctified them. No lay person may eat holy things, neither the guest of a priest, nor his hired servant. But if the priest has acquired a slave by purchase, the slave may eat them like anyone born in the house, for they eat his own food. If a priest's daughter marries a layman, she must not eat the holy portion set aside. But if she is widowed or divorced, and being childless, has had to return to her father's house, as when she was young, she may eat her father's food. No lay person may eat of it. If someone does eat a holy thing by inadvertence, he shall restore it to the priest with a 1/5 added. They must not profane the holy things which the sons of Israel have set aside for Yahweh. To eat these would lay on them a fault, demanding sacrifice of reparation. For it is I, Yahweh, who have sanctified these offerings. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, "Tell this to Aaron, to his sons, and to all the sons of Israel. Any man of the house of Israel, or any stranger living in Israel, who brings an offering either in payment of a vow or as a voluntary gift, and makes a holocaust with it for Yahweh, must, if he is to be acceptable, offer a male without blemish, ox, sheep, or goat. You must not offer one that is blemished, for it would not make you acceptable. If anyone offers to Yahweh a communion sacrifice either to fulfill a vow or as a voluntary offering, the animal, from the herd or from the flock, must be without blemish, if it is to be acceptable. No defect must be found in it. You must not offer to Yahweh an animal that is blind, lame, mutilated, ulcerous, or suffering from skin disease or sore. No part of such an animal shall be laid on the altar as a burnt offering for Yahweh. As a voluntary offering, you may offer a bull or a lamb that is underdeveloped or deformed, but such will not be acceptable in payment of a vow. An animal must not be offered to Yahweh if its testicles have been bruised, crushed, removed, or cut. You are not to do that in your country, and you are not to accept any such from the hands of a stranger to be offered as food for your God. Their deformity is a blemish, and they would not make you acceptable. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, "A calf, lamb, or kid shall stay with its dam 7 days after birth. From the 8th day it would be acceptable as a burnt offering to Yahweh. But no animal, whether cow or ewe, shall be immolated on the same day as its young. If you offer Yahweh a sacrifice with a praise, do it in the acceptable manner. It must be eaten the same day, with nothing left till the morning. I am Yahweh. You must keep my commandments and put them into practice. I am Yahweh. You must not profane my holy name. so that I may be proclaimed holy among the sons of Israel. I, Yahweh, who sanctify you. I, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Yahweh. Leviticus chapter 23. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, Speak to the sons of Israel, and say unto them, The solemn festivals of Yahweh to which you summon them are sacred assemblies. These are my solemn festivals. You may work for 6 days, but the seventh must be a day of complete rest, a day for the sacred assembly, on which you do no work at all. Wherever you live, this is a Sabbath for Yahweh. These are Yahweh's solemn festivals, the sacred assemblies to which you are to summon the sons of Israel on the appointed day. The 14th day of the first month, between the 2 evenings, is the Passover of Yahweh. And the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread for Yahweh. For 7 days you shall eat bread without leaven. On the first day you are to hold a sacred assembly. You must do no heavy work. For 7 days you shall offer a burnt offering to Yahweh. The 7th day is the day of sacred assembly. You must do no work. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, When you enter the land that I give you, and gather in the harvest there, you must bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the priest, and he is to present it to Yahweh with the gesture of offering, so that you may be acceptable. The priest shall make this offering on the day after the Sabbath, and on the same day as you make this offering, you are to offer Yahweh the holocaust of an unblemished lamb 1 year old. The oblation for that day shall be 2/10 of a wheaten flour mixed with oil, a burnt offering whose fragrance will appease Yahweh. The libation is to be 1/4 of a hin of wine. You are to eat no bread, roasted corn or baked bread before this day, before making the offering to your God. This is a perpetual law for all your descendants wherever you live. From the day after the Sabbath, the day on which you bring the sheaf offering, you are to count 7 full weeks. You are to count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath, and then you are to offer Yahweh a new oblation. You must bring bread from your houses to present with the gesture of offering, 2 loaves made of 2/10 of wheaten flour baked with leaven. These are first fruits for Yahweh. In addition to the bread, you must offer 7 unblemished lambs 1 year old, a young bull and 2 rams as a holocaust to Yahweh, together with an oblation and a libation, a burnt offering whose fragrance will appease Yahweh. You are to offer a goat as a sacrifice for sin, and 2 lambs 1 year old as a communion sacrifice. The priest shall present them before Yahweh with a gesture of offering, in addition to the bread of the first fruits. These and the 2 lambs are holy things for Yahweh, and will revert to the priest. This same day you are to hold an assembly. This shall be a sacred assembly for you. You will do no heavy work. This is a perpetual law for your descendants wherever you live. When you gather the harvest in your country, you are not to harvest to the very end of your field, and you are not to gather the gleanings of the harvest. You are to leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am Yahweh your God. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, The first day of the 7th month shall be a day of rest for you, a sacred assembly proclaimed with trumpet call. You must not do any heavy work, and you must offer a burnt offering to Yahweh. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, But the 10th day of the 7th month shall be a day of atonement. You are to hold a sacred assembly. You must fast, and you must offer a burnt offering to Yahweh. You are not to do any work that day, for it is the day of atonement, on which the rite of atonement will be performed over you before Yahweh your God. Indeed, anyone who fails to fast that day shall be outlawed from his people. Anyone who works that day I will remove from this people. No work must be done. This is a perpetual law for your descendants wherever you live. This is to be a day of Sabbath rest for you. You must fast on the evening of the 9th day of the month. From this to the following evening you must cease to work. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, "Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for Yahweh, lasting 7 days. The first day is a day of sacred assembly. You must do no heavy work. For 7 days you must offer a burnt offering to Yahweh. On the 8th day you are to hold a sacred assembly. You must offer a burnt offering to Yahweh. It is a day of solemn meeting. You must do no heavy work. These are the solemn festivals of Yahweh to which you are to summon the children of Israel, sacred assemblies for the purpose of offering burnt offerings, holocaust, oblations, sacrifices, and libations to Yahweh, according to the ritual of each day. Besides the Sabbaths of Yahweh and the presents and the votive and voluntary gifts that you make to Yahweh. But on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have harvested the produce of your land, you are to celebrate the feast of Yahweh for 7 days. On the 1st and 8th days there shall be a complete rest. On the 1st day you shall take choice fruits, palm branches, boughs of leafy trees, and willows from the riverbank, and for 7 days you shall rejoice in the presence of Yahweh your God. You are to celebrate a feast to Yahweh in this way for 7 days every year. This is a perpetual law for your descendants. You are to keep this feast in the 7th month. For 7 days you are to live in shelters. All natives of Israel must live in shelters, so that your descendants may know that I made the sons of Israel live in shelters when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God." And Moses described the solemn festivals of Yahweh to the sons of Israel. Leviticus chapter 24. Yahweh spoke to Moses. He said, "Order the sons of Israel to bring you pure olive oil for the lampstand, and keep a flame burning there continually. Outside the veil of testimony in the tent of meeting, Aaron is to see to this flame. It shall burn there before Yahweh from evening to morning continually. This is a perpetual law for your descendants. Aaron is to see to the lamps on the pure lampstand before Yahweh continually. You are to take wheaten flour, and with it bake 12 cobs, each of 2/10 of an ephah. Then you must set them in 2 rows of 6 on the pure table that stands before Yahweh. On each row you shall place pure incense. This will be the food offered as a memorial, a burnt offering for Yahweh, continually. Every Sabbath they shall be set before Yahweh. The sons of Israel are to provide them by unending covenant. They will belong to Aaron and his sons, who shall eat them in a holy place, for they are a most holy portion for him of Yahweh's burnt offerings. This is a perpetual law. There was a man whose mother was an Israelite woman, and whose father was an Egyptian. He came out of his house, and in the camp, surrounded by the sons of Israel, he began to quarrel with a man who was an Israelite. Now this son of the Israelite woman blasphemed the name and cursed it. So they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shelomith, daughter of Dibri, of the tribe of Dan. He was put under guard until the will of Yahweh should be made clear to them. Take the man who pronounced the curse outside the camp. Let all who have heard him lay their hands on his head, and let the whole community stone him. Then say to the sons of Israel, any man who curses his God shall bear the burden of his fault. The one who blasphemes the name of Yahweh must die. The whole community must stone him, stranger or native. If he blasphemes the name, he dies. If a man strikes down any human being, he must die. If a man strikes an animal down, he must make restitution for it, a life for a life. If a man injures his neighbor, what he has done must be done to him. Broken limb for broken limb, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As the injury afflicted, so must be the injury suffered. The one who strikes an animal down must make restitution for it, and the one who strikes down a man must die. The sentence you pass shall be the same whether it be on native or on stranger, for I am Yahweh your God. When Moses had said this to the sons of Israel, they took the man who had pronounced the curse out of the camp and stoned him. In this way, the sons of Israel carried out the order of Yahweh to Moses. The Jerusalem Bible, Ezekiel chapter 44, verses 15 through 31. As regards the Levitical priests, the sons of Zadok, who did their duty to me in the sanctuary when the Israelites strayed far from me, they may still approach me to serve me. They may stand in my presence to offer the fat and the blood. It is the Lord Yahweh who speaks. They may enter my sanctuary and approach my table to serve me. They may perform my liturgy. Once they enter the gates of the inner court, they are to wear linen vestments. They are to wear no wool when they serve inside the gates of the inner court and in its temple. They are to wear linen caps on their heads and linen breeches about their loins. They are not to wear belts. When they go out to the people in the outer court, they are to remove the vestments in which they have performed the liturgy, and leave them in the rooms of the holy place, and put on other clothes, so as not to hallow the people with their vestments. They are neither to shave their heads, nor to let their hair grow long, but must cut their hair in a reasonable length. No priest is to drink wine on the day he enters the inner court. They are not to marry widows or divorced women, but only virgins of the race of Israel. They may, however, marry widows, if the widow is of a priest. They are to teach my people the difference between what is sacred and what is profane, and make them understand the difference between what is clean and what is unclean. They are to be judges in disputes. They must judge in the spirit of my statutes. They must follow my laws and ordinances, at all my feasts, and keep my Sabbaths holy. They are not to go near dead man, in case they become unclean, except in those permissible cases, that is, for father, mother, daughter, son, brother, or unmarried sister. After one of them has been purified, 7 days must elapse. Then, on the day when he enters the holy place, enters the inner court to minister in the holy place, he is to offer his sacrifice for sin. It is the Lord Yahweh who speaks. They are to have no inheritance. I myself will be their inheritance. You are to give them no patrimony in Israel. I myself will be their patrimony. Their food is to be the oblation, the sacrifice for sin, and the sacrifice for reparation. Everything in Israel put under the ban must be for them. The best of all your first fruits, of every sort of dew, and of all that you offer, is to go to the priest. And the best of your dough you are also to give to the priest, so that a blessing may rest on your house. Priests are not to eat the flesh of anything that has died a natural death or been savaged, neither of a bird nor of any other creature. The Jerusalem Bible, Ezekiel chapter 44, verses 15 through 31. As regards the Levitical priest, the sons of Zadok, who did their duty to me in the sanctuary when the Israelites strayed far from me, they may still approach me to serve me. They may stand in my presence to offer the fat and the blood. It is the Lord Yahweh who speaks. They may enter my sanctuary and approach my table to serve me. They may perform my liturgy. Once they enter the gates of the inner court, they are to wear linen vestments. They are to wear no wool when they serve inside the gates of the inner court and in its temple. They are to wear linen caps on their heads and linen breeches about their loins. They are not to wear belts. When they go out to the people in the outer court, they are to remove the vestments in which they have performed the liturgy, and leave them in the rooms of the holy place, and put on other clothes, so as not to hallow the people with their vestments. They are neither to shave their heads, nor to let their hair grow long, but must cut their hair in a reasonable length. No priest is to drink wine on the day he enters the inner court. They are not to marry widows or divorced women, but only virgins of the race of Israel. They may, however, marry widows, if the widow is of a priest. They are to teach my people the difference between what is sacred and what is profane, and make them understand the difference between what is clean and what is unclean. They are to be judges in disputes. They must judge in the spirit of my statutes. They must follow my laws and ordinances at all my feasts and keep my Sabbaths holy. They are not to go near dead men in case they become unclean, except in those permissible cases, that is, for father, mother, daughter, son, brother, or unmarried sister. After one of them has been purified, 7 days must elapse. Then, on the day when he enters the holy place, enters the inner court to minister in the holy place, he is to offer his sacrifice for sin. It is the Lord Yahweh who speaks. They are to have no inheritance. I myself will be their inheritance. You are to give them no patrimony in Israel. I myself will be their patrimony. Their food is to be the oblation, the sacrifice for sin, and the sacrifice for reparation. Everything in Israel put under the ban must be for them. The best of all your first fruits, of every sort of dew, and of all that you offer, is to go to the priest, and the best of your dough you are also to give to the priest, so that a blessing may rest on your house. Priests are not to eat the flesh of anything that has died a natural death or been savaged, neither of a bird nor of any other creature. The Jerusalem Bible, 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 10. He is the living stone, rejected by men but chosen by God and precious to him. Set yourselves close to him, so that you too, the holy priesthood that offered spiritual sacrifices which Jesus Christ has made acceptable to God, may be living stones, making a spiritual house. As Scripture says, "See how I lay in Zion a precious cornerstone that I have chosen, and the man who rests his trust on it will not be disappointed." That means that for you who are believers, it is precious. But for unbelievers, the stone rejected by the builders has proved to be the keystone. A stone to stumble over, a rock to bring men down. They stumble over it because they do not believe in the word. It was the fate in store for them. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a consecrated nation, a people set apart, to sing the praises of God, who called you out of the darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people at all, and now you are the people of God. Once you were outside the mercy, and now you have been given mercy.